You are now listening to the Pelicans post-game report. Flash report.
For all things Pelicans, you're now listening to the Pelican post-game report. I am Big Q, kicking it in with y'all for this episode of PPR. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and by all means, feel free to share. Share the show on your social media feed. Let's get into it. NBA offseason check-in. New Orleans Pelicans. Just to go over, this is a brief recap of what happened to the Pelicans off-season, right? And this is a good breakdown right here done by Hoops Hype, as they kind of Hoops Rumors are letting people know about that, and just to remind the faithful of how far we've come from last year to this year, right? So the free agent signings: Kevon Looney, 2 years, $16 million. Second year is a team option, signed using a non-taxpayer mid-level exemption. So adding Kevon Looney to the Pelican squad gave them a undersized big who's extremely intelligent, plays good defense, really does a solid job on the offensive boards. We all can always could use it there. Very smart player. That was one of the centerpieces that helped the Golden State Warriors win multiple championships out there in the West. But this is the thing that we get in Kevon Looney's in later, a couple of years later on with the team, but we can still get good value out of Kevon, a smart player that helped the Pelicans. They also signed Jaden Springer, a 1-year minimum salary, non-guaranteed Exhibit 9 player, using the minimum salary exception. Trades that happened. We talked about the Pelicans sending that, pick, the 2023 pick in the 25 draft, and and the player Mojave King to the Pacers in exchange for their 2026 first round pick. Pelicans had acquired the Pacers 2026 first round pick with top 4 protection. In the previous trade, basically the Indiana Pacers acquired the pick back. So what did they do? Acquiring the draft rights to Derek Queen with the 13th pick this year, the Hawks in exchange for the rights to Asa Newell, the 23rd pick, and either the Pelicans or Bucks 2026 first round pick, whichever is more favorable. Acquiring Jordan Poole, Sadiq Bey, and the draft rights to Mika Peavy. So number 40th pick from the Wizards in a 3-team trade, including CJ McCollum, Kelly Olynyk, and the Bulls 2027 second round pick, and the draft rights to Mojave King, who went to the Rockets. The draft picks, right, that were picked up by the team, of course, is Jeremiah Fears, who signed the rookie scale contract, 4 years, over $34 million. Derek Queen signed his rookie deal, 4 years, at 24.3 plus. Mr. Peavy signed a 4-year deal at 8.6 plus. The first 2 years are guaranteed. The third year is non-guaranteed. The fourth year is a team option. So we'll see how that plays. The two-way signings for the Pelicans. We have 3 two-ways on the team. Trey Alexander, the guard, 1 year, $85,000 plus. Partial guaranteed as due to increase to over $318,000 at the start of the regular season. That's a big boost. Hunter Dickerson, the big center, 7-footer, who has a soft touch around the rim. 1 year, $85,300 partial guarantee with an increase of the same amount, over $318,000. Bryce McGowan's 1 year, $85,000, in which will increase at $318,000 plus at the start of the regular season. So the two ways there. Trey Alexander's a very interesting prospect. Hunter Dickerson, the Pelicans played in the summer league. Like what he did, wanted to bring him onto the team. They did with the 2-year contract. McGowan's is also an interesting two-way prospect. These are the departed or unsigned free agents. Brandon Boston Jr., who went overseas. Keon Brooks Jr., unsigned. Bruce Brown, who went to the Nuggets. Jamal Cain signed with the Magic. Elfrid Payton is still unsigned. And Jeremiah Robinson Earl is also unsigned. Other moves this Pelicans also made in signings. They re-signed Herb Jones to a 3-year deal at over $67 million. The extension kicks in the 2027-28 year, and includes a 3rd-year player option. So Joe Dumars committing to Herb Jones, giving Trey paper as well. Trey got his paper. Herb got his deal, which is great. They waived Antonio Reeves on a non-guaranteed contract. A lot of people didn't like that. I think he got picked up by somebody. I know Lester Quinones also got picked up by somebody. But Reeves was a favorite. A lot of people was in the summer league, showed some stuff, but Dumars and them chose Joe and Troy Weaver decided to go in a different direction. How's the cap situation look for the faithful? Right now, the Pelicans are operating over the cap, 154 plus mil below the luxury tax of over 187.9, carrying approximately 83.7 mil in salary. Now they're hard capped at 195.9 plus. Can't go over that. And a portion of the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is 6.1 plus, is available. So they still have a portion of the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is over 6 million. They still have access to the full biannual exception, which is 5.1 plus, and the 3 traded player exceptions available. Is the largest one of them is 13.4 plus mil. So the Pelicans still have some tricks in their bag if they want to do some stuff, right? So we'll just to make note of that. That's the money situation. Off season so far, the future of New Orleans has looked bright during David Griffin's first year as the operations chief in 2019-20. The Pelicans had just acquired a haul of players and draft picks headlined by BI from the Lakers in exchange for AD, and lucked into the number 1 pick, which was Zion Williamson, who looked like a natural successor to Davis. As to Zion, BI, and a handful of the key players consistently derailed the team's forward momentum. During Griffin's 6 years on the job, the Pelicans posted a winning record just twice and compiled a total of 2 playoff victories and a pair of brief postseason appearances. The organization still hasn't given up on Zion, who has missed more regular season games, 258, during his first 6 years than he's played, which is 214. That's crazy work, right? That's crazy work. How 258 versus 214, that's so crazy. And faced a lawsuit this spring accusing him of rape and abuse. But Ingram was traded in February, and Griffin was subsequently replaced during the spring by Pistons general manager Joe Dumars. The decision to hire Joe Dumars raised some eyebrows. The long-term executive was the architect of Detroit's team that advanced to at least the Eastern Conference Finals 6 straight years during the 2000s. But the second half of his tenure with the Pistons produced underwhelming results, and it has been a while since he's even been involved in personnel decisions for an NBA team. He's worked in the league office for the past 3 years. So Joe's first summer in New Orleans has been a fascinating one. On the surface, many of the moves he has made point toward a soft reset for the Pelicans. The club added a pair of rookies in the draft, Jeremiah Fears and Derek Queen, and got younger in a trade with CJ Kelly-Olynyk to the Wizards in exchange for Poole, Sadiq Bey, and second-round pick Mr. Peavy. With DeJounte Murray still recovering from that torn Achilles injury that figures to keep him on the shelf for at least the start of the season, Herb and Trey Murphy III coming off shoulder surgeries, and even Bey still making his way back from an ACL tear, there's a world in which the Pelicans take a patient approach in the 25-26 campaign, wait for all their key players to get healthy, and evaluate the core players and rookies to see how they all fit together before pushing forward in 26-27. But it doesn't seem like the approach is the one Joe Dumars has in mind. The price to trade up from 23 to 13 for Queen, but it doesn't seem like the approach is the one Joe Dumars and the Pelicans have in mind. The price to trade up from 23 to 13 for Queen was New Orleans' 2026 first-round pick, which will be the most favorable for the Pelicans' own first-rounder and Bucks' first-rounder. That unprotected pick was sent to Atlanta for the rights to draft Queen, leaving New Orleans without a first-round selection next year, and strongly suggesting that tanking won't be a consideration. And that's a part of the game. There is no more patient approach here, and that's Joe Dumars coming in here. Because that's been a major problem with the Pelicans organization is the lack of aggression. The constant ridiculous talking points about all the stuff that David Griffin was talking about was weakening the team. There was a soft, if pardon my French, bitch-ass team. We can't have that no more. We need players that commit to gaining a tough identity in the city of New Orleans. We are a strong, resilient, blue-collar city. We work hard and we don't take no mess. That should be the mentality that this team has. There should be nothing soft about the New Orleans Pelicans. That's how you get respect. It is not going to be easy to come to the Smoothie King Center and beat the Pelicans without leaving with some lumps and bumps and bruises. and some respect for what we do here. That should have been in the talking point. I'm glad Joe Dumars is here because he brings the tough ass mentality that he played with from Detroit and what he instilled in the first several years of his team's success in winning a championship. Coach, as an administrator, by architecting this thing. This could be a similar situation with better results because he didn't have to take everything. He had to start basically anew. Detroit fell into a terrible situation and started losing for a long time before he had to build it up again. The Pelicans have the pieces in place. They just needed a leader and direction. The main issue to the Pelicans outside of health is the direction of the team on the court, which ties to the head coach. Now let's get back to this article. If Queen turns into an impact player and that, quote, most favorable 2026 pick ends up in mid to late teens, the trade would be a coup for Dumars, but it carries remarkable risk given the Pelicans is coming off a 21-win season and probably won't have its starting guard available when the 25-26 season tip-offs. So basically, because that's something that all these other people want to build stories about. Not saying this is right, but we've heard it all before. We heard it ESPN and all these other clowns, Fox and all this, talk about the worst trade of the season was the Pelicans giving up an unprotected pick to get at Queen, move up several spots or so to go and get Queen. And Joe Dumars said in the press conference is that they have their first round draft pick from next year. He said that. But the thing is, they're focusing on it and they're so stupid they don't realize that you don't make a comment. Now, I ain't gonna say you make a comment, but you don't grade the trade until after you see what fruits it have. Because if the Pelicans are in the playoffs, then you won't say nothing about that stupid ass pick. You hear what I'm saying? They got 2 lottery selections in 1 year. Both of those guys, the Pelicans had very high grades on. And when they pulled the trigger to get 2 lottery picks in the same year, they believe those guys are, and they win. And like I said, Joe said that they got their first round draft pick from next year on the team. In the competitive Western Conference, they're far from a lock to make the playoffs. And while it doesn't look like Giannis is going anywhere at this point, the Bucks pick has real lottery upside too in the event that he's injured or trade. Even if the Pelicans are relatively confident, another 21 season and on tap, the 39-win Mavericks just provided a reminder that the flat lottery odds open the door for a middle-of-the-pack team to claim a top pick. The Pelicans know this firsthand, having jumped from 7 in the pre-lottery order to get Zion and Zion went back in 2019. Now, the pressure will be on Willie Green. This is where it gets to turn things around after a disappointing 24-25 season. Dumars, who has long been fond of Green, nearly drafted him for the Pistons in 2003. He opted not to make a head coaching change immediately after taking the reins because Gail Benson told him that Willie stays. She let him do everything else, but told Joe Dumars that she wants Willie to remain and prove himself this year. Willie has 1 year left on his contract. So whether he's fine to Willie or not, Willie Green has to win. And that is outside of the health staff is 2 of the biggest things the Pelicans have to deal with is the health and the coaching direction. Now, I think this team is deep enough to kind of deal with some of this stuff. But like I said, man, you never can tell with the Pelicans. Green, Now, however, if the Pelicans underachieve again in 25-26, it's not hard to imagine that Willie Green, being the next NBA head coach, finds himself on the hot seat. Willie Green is the number 1 coach on the hot seat right now. Absolutely. Starting the season, he knows it. We uploaded one of the videos, his latest interview with Fletcher Mackel, shout out to him at WDSU, talking to Willie Green. Boy, that raccoon mask is getting darker and darker. Willie Green is the number 1 NBA head coach on the hot seat right now. He definitely is. Everything has been changed about this team insofar as the administrators. All those guys from Griffin and all his people, all those guys are gone. So Willie Green don't have anybody in the office outside of Gail. Jazzy Jeff in cheerleading for him. But if he doesn't produce the wins, listen, I'm gonna just say this straight up. The Pelicans are not gonna go through a full season of Willie Green stumbling and bumbling. They got in their minds there's a plan. If Willie wins so many games or whatnot, then he stays on with the team. There could be a future for Willie Green if he could prove that he can win and step up his stuff. A lot of people have their doubts, including me, because we've seen enough of Willie Green. And adjusting is not something Willie Green does well. Strategy is not something Willie Green does well. Motivating players is not something Willie Green does well. And those are key things that you need to have to be other coaches that have those same skills greater than your own. You see, that's where that stands. It finds himself fired. That's the big part when we talk about basketball outside of health. That's really everybody's gearing it to. I think Willie Green is a nice guy, but nice guy ain't got shit to do with winning no ball games. You can be a bit of a a-hole if you got to, but at the same time, if you can get people to relate to you, you're going to be fine. And also, Willie Green lost his team last year. So how does he then gain the confidence of a team that did not want to play for him and know that he's here because the owner is keeping him here because the general manager more than likely would have got rid of him and brought his own guy in. James Borrego is instrumental as well in case that happens, but they're not going to wait a full year to F around with Willie Green. No, Willie Green has up to a certain point, a certain amount of games how this team looks before Joe Dumars pulls that guillotine string and that blade comes slashing down. In addition to Fears, Queen, Poole, and Bay, the Pelicans' other notable newcomers this offseason was longtime Warriors center Kevon Looney. While I have some reservations about Queen, Poole, Bay trades, I like Looney signing. He has long been an underrated defender and rebounder, and he's still just 29 years of age. He has a 2-year, $16 million contract. One of the years is guaranteed. He should bring some added stability to the center position for the Pelicans as they rely on yet a young Yves Messier as a starter in 24-25. Kevon Looney is definitely coming into. If the Pelicans had to start a game next week, the starting lineup for the Pelicans coming out that joint is definitely Kevon Looney at 5. You got, these are the 5 guys. Kevon Looney, Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, and Jordan Poole. That's your 5. And that's a beautiful 5, too, because you got a smart, undersized big that gets offensive rebounds, that runs the floor well, is very efficient in what he does, and fits well with these other players. His temperament, he brings toughness, he brings championship experience. Jordan Poole is a former teammate of him, so that's some synergy and chemistry that those two guys can have from the Golden State days. Jordan's a 20-point scorer, can light it up from downtown, can also pass the ball, can also benefit from Zion Williamson's gravity when guys doubling and tripling down on Zion. Trey Murphy's there, Jordan Poole's there, Herb Jones can hit wide open shots when he needs to. And you have Kevon Looney moving and cutting and doing what you got to do. And also, Kevon Looney's a very underrated passing big too. So he makes the Pelicans smarter defensively as well as offensively. Very smart moves. We'll figure out the bench, but that's what I got on that. Then up next, what's next? Pelicans carrying 14 players on guaranteed contracts for the upcoming year. With Jaden Springer signing a 9-guaranteed Exhibit 9 contract, the 3 two-way slots have been filled. New Orleans has about $4.2 million in breathing room below the tax line, which is more than enough for a 15th man on a minimum salary contract. While it's possible the team will leave the spot open to start the season for sakes of flexibility, it probably makes sense for depth purposes to fill it. Even that Murray likely won't be ready to play, and a few other players will be managing carefully as they return from some major injuries. Springer may be the 15th man candidate for now, but the Pelicans could bring in a couple more vets on training camp deals to compete for the spot. And since whomever makes the team will likely be a 9-guaranteed contract, the Pels will have the flexibility to waive that player a month or 2 into the regular season without. The Pelicans already took care of their top extension candidate this offseason by signing Jones to a 3-year, $67+ million deal. That was a smart move that should pay off, especially if Jones, already one of the NBA's best defenders, can continue developing and expanding this offensive game, which is what he was doing before he got hurt. We're going to have some flexibility to waive a player a month or, doing it without paying the full salary, which would be interesting. It will likely be the last extension the Pelicans sign before the regular season begins. Williamson and Poole will both be eligible to sign new deals, but the club seems extremely unlikely to further invest in that duo at this point, given they both still have multiple years left on their contracts. Poole has yet to even play a game as a Pelican, while Williamson will, at very least, need an extension run of good health, or an extended run, rather, of good health to warrant another significant commitment from the Pelicans. This is a huge year for the Pelicans in terms of the Zion Williamson situation, because this is another general manager coming here and an opportunity to build the Pelicans the correct way. And until Joe, and like I said, and it makes sense because Kevon Looney and Jordan Poole are on 2-year deals. That is a good window to see if this team could play this year. And I like what you heard what we heard what Joe Dumars said during the Saints. Some of you probably didn't hear it about what Joe Dumars was saying about the Saints. About the Pelicans. Zion Williamson, how he's out there in California training, and he was given big credit and praise. There was also a situation where the Pelicans, he also made mention as well as that he talked to the players and told them if they weren't happy being in New Orleans, that he would happily find them a place to play. And I think a lot of the people are the players on the team want to play and want to see what this looks like, right? Zion finally will be the centerpiece of the team. The pressure, and like I said, people asking me, Q, what do you think about in this type of thing? We covered it so many shows on PPR and our longer stream shows, which will be coming up soon, is the fact that the Pelicans have officially made Zion the centerpiece. That was just lip service under David Griffin. He was too scared to commit to anything. So it's Zion's team. The Pelicans are not going to be handling this with kid gloves with Zion Williamson. They want to finally see if he has what it takes to lead a team to the playoffs. Joe Dumars is not playing for the future. He's playing for right now. The team with Jordan Poole, who's a 20-point scorer who can fill it up. Herb Jones will be coming back from injury and playing his defense. He's going to get back to where he was. The wide open 3-point shots, he has to improve that. Trey Murphy is ready for a bigger role with the team. There's no more BI in his way. It's now Trey having an opportunity to show what he can do. He's healthy. And of course, the additions of Kayvon Looney, them adding a good bench, Sadiq Bey, 15 points a game, good player, having him there, bringing Jordan Hawkins along, adding the young talent of Queen and Fears to come off the bench helps to have a brighter future for the Pelicans. And if Zion struggles, once Queen's healthy, perhaps they move him in there. Having Eve's game continue to develop. The teams also add some interesting players there, and they're not done yet. Now we know, I think the biggest question mark in terms of the players is what do the Pelicans do with DeJounte Murray, because we know DeJounte was one of the most vocal opponents of the old Pelicans, right? So he's not healthy enough to be traded right now, but once he becomes healthy in his $30 million contract, how do the Pelicans then handle that? And it'll be an interesting thing because, when DeJounte Murray comes back from injury, do we still have Willie Green as the head coach? So a lot of things could be changing between now and then. So one of the most key positions for the Pelicans is the head coach. And there's so much strife around that situation that happened last year for Willie Green, and his temperament, watching these interviews, he's not saying anything new. I don't think he has a clue of what to do. I don't think he picked up anything. He learned anything to get better. If he did, he's not showing it in these interviews. He still sounds the same. His answers are still boring and bland. And there is no faith in Willie Green. And he knows it. And the only way he's here because of the ownership. These are things that we have to deal with the faithful. But that's just a brief recap. Just laying it on the line for the Pelicans and giving you guys the rundown on the Pelicans going into this up year. As we get ready to it, we got about a month and so before we get ready for some basketball again. It's getting close. All right. So anyway, with that being said, man, y'all let me know how y'all feel about this in the comment section below. Put it in the damn comment section below. Let me know how you feel about this article, about this information. What do you guys think the biggest hang-ups are for the Pelicans? And how do we fix them? What do you think about DeJounte Murray? Could he fit with what the Pelicans do, or is he a possible trade candidate? What do you guys think about all this stuff? Put it in the comment section below and let me know. With that being said, man, I'm going to get out on that. I appreciate all you guys for being on the show tonight. Please feel free to hit the like button, hit the sub button, and the share button, and that little notification button for more PPR flash reports. Shout out to DC and Lex and the flocking community, man. We're going to holler at you on the next one. Much love. Peace and go Pelicans.
Subscribe now and stay up to date for all things New Orleans Pelicans.